Git is a version control system that lets you keep track of the files in a project. In order to use Git, we start by identifying a folder as a Git repository. And you do that by issuing a git init command within a folder. Let's go ahead and take care of that and look at some of the basic commands you'll need to get things going. So in my desktop, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it project. And I'll open this up in my favorite text editor. I like using Sublime Text. Open a copy of the terminal. Go ahead and clear out the terminal so we start with a clean screen. In my project folder, I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call this index.html, and I'll create some basic HTML content in there. I'm going to save this file, and I'll make a copy of it. It's already here on this project folder, so I'll just make a copy of it by right-clicking and selecting duplicate. You can also do copy and paste if you're on a Mac or a PC. Now on a PC, the terminal application would be the git bash application. Do not use the DOS command prompt, or some of these commands are not going to work. So in our about page, I'm going to modify this to say about, and I'll use a different pangram here. Pangram is a sentence that uses all the letters of the alphabet. All right, so let's say that we want to keep track of this project using version control. You can do that by making sure that in the terminal, you're inside this project folder. So first I need to travel to the desktop/project folder using the cd command in your terminal application or git bash. And then in there, I can issue a git init command. This will initialize this folder as a Git repository. You can tell that this is being tracked by Git because there's a hidden folder inside this directory. You can't see it with your regular operating system, so it's not here. But if you go to the terminal and you issue an ls command or an ls-la command, you'll see that there is another folder here called .git. It's an invisible folder, but this is where Git is going to keep track of everything going on with your project. Git has a couple of different places where you can store the state of files. One of them is called the staging environment. We can add anything to the staging environment by using the command called git add, and then the name of the file that we want to add. So for example, you can say git add index.html, and what that will do is add that file into our staging environment. And you know that that has happened because you can do a git status command and take a look at the status of the files. Now you can see that there are two files here. One of them is our new file index.html that we have added to the Git staging environment, and therefore it's ready for something called committing, or it's ready to be committed. And then there's this other file called about.html that is being listed as an untracked document. That means that Git doesn't know anything about it, it's not going to track it, and so it's not really part of what Git knows. You can add individual files to the staging environment, but really most of the time you'll want to work on a number of files or just add all of the files that you've made changes to. That command is called git add and then period. Now if we execute this and we do a git status command, you'll notice that now both of those files are ready to be committed. As you work through a project, you can keep on adding things to the staging environment until you're ready to commit it to a permanent record. The git status command is always going to show you what is going with Git at any particular moment. It shows you what's in the staging queue or any files that are untracked by Git at the moment. Let's say that we're ready to make a record of where our environment is at this time. That is called committing. Now the difference between staging and committing is sort of like saving a file versus printing it. When you save a file, you sort of save the current state of the document. However, when you print something, it becomes a more permanent record. More than likely because this is something that is ready for somebody to look at. A printed document is much more serious than just something you save on your hard drive. So a commit is a record of the state of the folder. Whatever was in the staging environment will be logged as a record in the commit log. So let's go ahead and commit these files. So we'll say git commit. You always do a -m, which allows you to create a message for this commit. And we'll say this is revision 1. So you should get a message like this. Now, when you commit things for the very first time, you might get a message that looks something like this. Now, Git is used to tracking projects for multiple users, so it's important to let it know your personal information. Just go ahead and run these two commands with your own name and email address. When you make a commit, a record of where everything is gets stored, so that we can always come back to this point in time. Now let's go ahead and run a git status command to see where we're at. So it's showing you that we're on a branch called master. We'll talk about that in a later video. But it's saying that there's nothing to commit, everything is clean, so there is no files that we've made changes to. There's actually a record in our log that shows us where we're at. So we can look at the log by issuing the git log command. And let me go ahead and clear the screen out because it's a little bit better sometimes when you're working with a lot of commands. We'll do a git log command, and you can see that the commit that we did is right here. And it gets this really weird hash, and it also gets a name down here, which is what we added as the comment when we issue the commit -m command. This is going to show the first line of what your commit message was. The commit message can actually be longer, but all you're going to see here is just the first line. Now, a log shows a record of all the commits that we've been making in our project. So as your project gets more and more complicated, you're going to see a lot of these different logs. Now, those are probably the commands that you'll run most often with any project. And that's already a lot of commands to learn in one sitting. So make sure you take some time to create projects with Git init, to take a look at the status and add some files into staging, and then commit some files. Play around with it. Me talking about it is not going to teach you all that much. This is definitely something that you want to try out yourself.